Keep your hands off what isn't meant for you! The sharp slap against James Turner's wrist echoed through the luxury hotel kitchen. Food and beverage. Director Pamela Whitaker's voice cut like a knife. Those aren't for the help. Know your place. Heat rushed to his face as nearby executives exchanged uncomfortable glances, his dignity scattered like the crumbs from the corporate lunch tray. Meridian Hotel Group dominated the luxury market. Their flagship hosted elite corporate events weekly. Marble floors gleamed. Power radiated. James Turner had survived 12 years behind those walls. Assistant kitchen manager, 42. Widowed, a culinary school graduate working 2 jobs. Cancer took his wife 3 years ago. Medical bills emptied their savings. Now his son's medical school tuition consumed every dollar he earned. Kitchen staff respected James. Management didn't. Pamela Whitaker changed everything after her appointment 8 months ago. White employees got better schedules. Promotions shifted away from minorities. Customer compliments about black staff vanished from records. CEO Daniel Hayes reviewed reports in the presidential suite. 58 self-made. He'd expanded Meridian from 3 properties to 30 nationwide. His quarterly inspections struck fear. He saw everything but remained invisible to staff. Silver hair, custom suits. Few knew the man behind the reputation. James's alarm blared at 4:30 a.m. He rose silently in the dark, careful not to wake the neighbors in their thin-walled apartment building. He checked on his sleeping son David's textbooks still open on his desk before slipping out. The hospital kitchen welcomed him at 5 a.m. For 8 hours, he prepared meals for patients with specific dietary needs. The work was methodical, institutional. By 1 p.m., he changed uniforms in his car and drove across town to Meridian, where he would remain until 10 p.m. 16-hour days, 6 days a week. The relentless schedule served a purpose. David's medical school loans required $1,850 monthly. The lingering medical bills from his wife's treatment added another $575. Their modest 2-bedroom apartment cost $1,200. The math never changed. James needed both jobs to keep his promise to his late wife that their son would become a doctor. At Meridian, James moved with precision. He had been passed over for promotion to executive kitchen manager 4 times, despite glowing performance reviews. The latest rejection came 3 months after Pamela's arrival. "We're looking for someone with more polish," she had explained, while promoting a less experienced white colleague. The rhythmic sound of kitchen doors swinging, the constant chop of knives against cutting boards, and the hiss of steam from industrial dishwashers created the soundtrack of James's second life. He absorbed it all with quiet dignity, saving his energy for work rather than complaint. The Morrison Tech Investors Banquet filled the grand ballroom with Silicon Valley executives and venture capitalists. CEO. Hayes attended personally, working the room with practiced charm. In the kitchen, James supervised the plating of a 5-course dinner that had taken 3 days to prepare. As the event concluded, staff began clearing substantial leftovers, perfectly good food bound for disposal. James watched as waiters discarded untouched dinner rolls, sliced beef tenderloin, and gourmet sides into large bins. "Ms. Whitaker," James approached respectfully as service wound down, "there's quite a bit of untouched food tonight. Would it be possible for me to take some home? My son's been studying all week for his medical boards, and I haven't had time to shop." Pamela turned from her clipboard, eyebrows raised. Several executives lingered nearby, waiting for their coats. "Our food isn't charity, James," she replied, voice carrying across the kitchen. "If you can't afford groceries, perhaps you need a better-paying job." The kitchen fell silent. Line cooks stopped mid-motion. Waitstaff suddenly found reasons to look elsewhere. James felt every eye that wasn't looking directly at him. "I understand," he said quietly, maintaining eye contact. "Thank you for clarifying the policy." What James didn't see was CEO Hayes pausing in the doorway, listening to the entire exchange. Hayes watched as James straightened his shoulders and returned to work, directing staff with the same professionalism as before the humiliation. As James left that night, empty-handed but with dignity intact, a simple question hung in the air. Would he report this treatment, or would he silently endure as he had before? James arrived at Meridian precisely at 1:45 p.m. the next day. The routine remained unchanged, crisp uniform, personal knives in their roll case, scheduled check-in at the staff board. But today, something was different. His name, previously listed for banquet supervision, now appeared next to Kitchen Deep Clean. He blinked, checked again. No mistake. Schedule adjustment. Pamela's voice came from behind him, the subtle designer perfume announcing her presence before her words. She held a steaming coffee in one manicured hand, tablet in the other. We need someone with your attention to detail on the cleaning crew today. James turned slowly, maintaining professional composure. The Wilson wedding is tonight. I planned the menu personally, consulted with the family 3 times. Plans change. She smiled thinly, eyes cold. Stevens will handle the event. Unless this is a problem for you. James felt eyes on them from across the kitchen. Line cooks pretending to focus on prep work. Servers hovering near the service station. All watching without watching. No problem at all, Ms. Whitaker. His voice remained even. I'll start in the walk-in freezers. Excellent. I knew I could count on you, could count on. She turned away, dismissal clear in her posture. For the next 8 hours, James scrubbed grease traps, sanitized freezer walls, and scoured equipment normally handled by new hires or dedicated cleaning staff. His hands cracked from industrial-strength cleaners. His knees ached from hours on tile floors. Yet each task was completed to perfection, surfaces gleaming in his wake. During his break, he overheard Stevens, the newly appointed banquet supervisor, frantically searching for the Wilson wedding notes, the special dietary restrictions, the bride's allergy concerns, all information James had carefully documented and filed. James, Stevens approached, desperation evident. The notes for tonight. Second drawer, blue folder, all restrictions highlighted in yellow. Seating chart attached with table numbers corresponding to dietary needs. James answered without looking up from his meal. Stevens exhaled with relief. Thanks, man. I don't know why they switched this dash. Just make sure the bride's father gets the shellfish-free option. He won't mention his allergy, but it's severe. Stevens nodded gratefully and hurried away. Meanwhile, in the executive offices upstairs, CEO Hayes summoned the head of security to his temporary suite. I need the employee file for James Turner, he instructed. Full employment history, performance reviews, commendations, complaints, everything. The security chief nodded. Will take about 20 minutes to compile, sir. Also, I want to review the kitchen security footage from last night. Specifically, the interaction between Turner and Whitaker. The security chief's expression shifted subtly. Sir? Is there a problem? Hayes asked. No, sir. I'll have everything brought up immediately. 30 minutes later, Hayes studied the thick folder spread across his desk. James Turner's employment application from 12 years ago, culinary degree with honors from a respected institute. 6 commendation letters from guests specifically naming him. Perfect attendance record across more than a decade. Performance reviews consistently exceeding expectations until 8 months ago when they suddenly became merely satisfactory with vague criticisms. Hayes tapped his finger on the most recent review. Lacks leadership presence. Communication could improve. Not fully aligned with department vision. Generic criticism without specific incidents or examples. He switched to the security footage. The interaction from the previous night played out exactly as he had witnessed it. James approaching respectfully. Pamela's public humiliation. James maintaining dignity despite the blow. Hayes rewound and watched again, noting the reactions of other staff, the averted eyes, the discomfort, the familiarity with this pattern. The kitchen clock ticked relentlessly as James continued his assigned cleaning. The industrial dishwasher ground through another cycle. Chemical cleaners burned his nostrils as he scrubbed equipment that already gleamed. The question hung silently in the air. Would James stand up for himself, or was the risk of losing this job too great? 2 days later, chaos erupted in the wine cellar during afternoon inventory. 3 bottles of Chateau Margaux 1995, $1,200 each, missing from their designated slots. The sommelier reported directly to Pamela, who immediately stormed into the kitchen during lunch preparation. "Turner!" she called sharply, voice cutting through the kitchen noise. "My office!" Now. The entire staff froze momentarily. James carefully set down his knife, wiped his hands methodically on his towel, and nodded to his assistant to continue the garlic mince. The walk through the kitchen felt interminable, every eye tracking his movement. Inside her glass-walled office designed to showcase her authority to passing guests, Pamela didn't offer him a seat. She remained standing behind her desk, posture rigid with accusation. "Care to explain the missing wine?" Her tone suggested she already had her conclusion. James kept his expression neutral. "Which wine would that be, Ms. Whitaker?" "Don't play dumb. 3 bottles of Chateau Margaux 1995, nearly $4,000 worth." "I don't have access to the wine cellar." She scoffed. "You have master keys as assistant manager." "Those keys don't include the wine cellar." James's voice remained calm, factual. "The cellar requires the digital fingerprint system installed last year. My prints aren't authorized. Someone took 3 bottles Tuesday night. You worked late. I was supervising the Johnson anniversary dinner until 10 p.m. 20 staff members can verify my location throughout the evening." Pamela's eyes narrowed. "The system shows the cellar door opened at 11:20 p.m. I clocked out at 10:15. The security log will confirm it, as will the parking garage camera showing my departure." The tension between them stretched taut. Through the glass walls, James could see kitchen staff stealing glances toward the office, speculation running wild. "We'll see about that." Her dismissal was clear. "Don't leave town." James returned to the kitchen, aware of whispers following him. No one met his eyes directly. The isolation was strategic. Separate the target, make them vulnerable, create doubt. "Back to work," he said quietly to his station team. "The salmon won't prep itself." In the security office, CEO Hayes watched the entire exchange on monitors. His jaw tightened as he reviewed access logs showing the wine cellar entry authorized by Pamela's fingerprint at 11:20 p.m., exactly as stated. The same logs showed James's departure through the employee exit at 10:17 p.m. "Has anyone informed Ms. Whitaker of the fingerprint records?" Hayes asked the security chief. "She hasn't requested them, sir." Hayes nodded slowly. "Don't volunteer the information. I want to see how this plays out." That night, James sat at his kitchen table after David had gone to bed. He opened his personal notebook, leather-bound, a gift from his late wife. Inside, meticulous entries documented every interaction, every slight, every questionable management decision. He recorded the day's accusation with precision time, location, exact wording, witnesses present. As he wrote, he remembered his late wife's words during her final months. "Your patience isn't weakness, it's strategic. Know when to wait and when to act." "I'm trying to find that line, Marie," he whispered to her memory. The next morning, tension filled the kitchen. Staff divided into clusters, conversations dropping to whispers when James approached. The sommelier confirmed the missing wine hadn't been located. Security conducted interviews with select staff, James noticeably excluded from the investigation, despite being the primary suspect in Pamela's eyes. Steam filled the kitchen as stock pots simmered. Glass clinked as staff nervously inventoried remaining wine bottles under supervision. James breathed steadily, focusing on lunch preparation with the same precision he always showed. Would anyone stand up for him, or was he truly alone in this workplace? Saturday brought the governor's charity gala 300 guests, including state politicians, business leaders, and celebrities. Meridian's most prestigious annual event, with media coverage guaranteed. James arrived at 6 a.m. to begin preparations, only to learn the executive chef had fallen ill overnight with food poisoning. Despite his recent demotion and the swirling wine theft allegations, the kitchen staff naturally turned to James for leadership. They followed his direction without question, the unspoken acknowledgement of his expertise transcending official hierarchy. While managing the massive food preparation effort, James had an inspiration. For the dessert course, he created a spectacular chocolate sculpture for each table intricate edible art featuring the charity's logo intertwined with the state symbol. He worked through his break, hands moving with artistic precision, transforming chocolate into architecture. When the ballroom doors opened for dinner, guests gasped audibly at the presentation. Phones emerged immediately, capturing photos of the dramatic centerpieces. Social media buzz began before the first course was served. During the main course, the governor himself approached the kitchen to compliment the chef. Pamela intercepted him at the door. "Governor Williams, so pleased you're enjoying the evening," she beamed. "Magnificent presentation," he replied. "Your pastry chef is an artist. That chocolate work is museum quality." Pamela smiled broadly. "Thank you, Governor." "Our team worked very hard on the concept. Please extend my personal compliments to whoever created those sculptures. Haven't seen craftsmanship like that since my visit to Paris." "I certainly will," she assured him, never glancing toward James, who worked within earshot. The event ended with thunderous applause and record-breaking donation pledges. As staff began the extensive cleanup process, Pamela cornered James in the now empty ballroom, waiting until they were alone. "Who authorized the chocolate sculptures?" Her voice cut through the quiet space, echoing slightly against the high ceiling. James continued gathering his specialized tools. "The executive chef approved the concept last week before falling ill." "Those weren't in the approved menu. I reviewed it personally." The opportunity presented itself with Chef Morris absent. The materials were already on hand for the planned dessert. "You overstepped. Again." She moved closer, invading his personal space. The approved dessert was chocolate mousse, not art installations. The guests seemed pleased. "That's not the point." She stepped even closer, voice dropping dangerously. "You're trying to make me look bad." "Stealing my spotlight with the governor." "I'm trying to do my job," James replied evenly. "Create the best possible experience for our guests." "Your job is what I say it is." Her finger jabbed toward his chest, stopping just short of touching him. "This is insubordination. First the wine, now this." James straightened to his full height, voice remaining calm. "I've documented every instance of discrimination for 3 years, Ms. Whitaker. Every schedule change, every overlooked promotion, every interaction like this one. I have dates, times, and witnesses." She laughed sharply, the sound brittle against the empty ballroom's acoustics. "Playing the race card? How predictable. How tiresome." "It's not a card," James replied. "It's my reality." Through the partially open door at the back of the ballroom, CEO Hayes watched the exchange, his expression darkening with each word. Sugar's sweet scent lingered in the air. Bitterness filled James's mouth as he maintained his professional demeanor. His calm voice cut through Pamela's dismissive laughter. Would James finally take action against this treatment, and at what cost to his family's future? James left work at midnight, exhaustion heavy in his shoulders after the 18-hour day. The parking garage was nearly empty, his 10-year-old Honda sitting alone in the employee section. He didn't notice the black Audi pulling out several cars behind him as he exited onto the main street. CEO Hayes followed at a careful distance, headlights dimmed. He recognized the impropriety. This wasn't company policy. Definitely not legal without cause. But after what he'd witnessed, he needed to understand the full picture. James stopped at a 24-hour pharmacy in a strip mall. Hayes parked across the lot, watching as James entered and then exited 7 minutes later with a small white bag, prescription medication perhaps. The Honda continued through increasingly modest neighborhoods. 20 minutes later, James parked at Oakwood Gardens Apartments, a clean but clearly budget-conscious complex in a working-class neighborhood. Hayes parked across the street, observing as James climbed 3 flights of exterior stairs to Unit 307. Light spilled from the apartment as James entered. Through partially open blinds, Hayes glimpsed a living room. Simple furniture, well-maintained, nothing extravagant. A file cabinet in the corner caught his attention, the drawer partially open, revealing neatly labeled folders meticulously organized. The neighborhood streetlights cast dim pools on cracked pavement. Hayes's luxury car hummed quietly in the night. The cool air carried the scent of someone's late dinner from a nearby apartment. A dog barked in the distance. Why was the CEO personally following James? And what did he plan to do with what he learned about this man's private life? Hayes sat in his car for 15 minutes, contemplating his next move. This wasn't corporate procedure, far from it. But conventional methods had clearly failed if discrimination this blatant had flourished under his leadership. Decision made, he approached the apartment building quietly. Unit 307 occupied the corner position, windows glowing warmly against the night. Voices drifted through a partially open window, the apartment evidently too warm despite the evening chill. "Dad, you look exhausted." A young man's voice articulate, concerned, educated. Long shift. Governor's Gala, big success. James sounded drained but satisfied. "You need to eat something. I made pasta." "Not hungry." "How was your study group?" "Productive. We covered cardiovascular pathology all evening. Dr. Winters might include it on the exam." Hayes positioned himself where he could see inside without being obvious, a questionable action he'd never imagined taking when he arrived in town for a routine inspection. Through the window, he observed James sitting at a small kitchen table with a young man in his 20s, clearly his son David. Medical textbooks surrounded them, stacked in organized piles. Anatomical diagrams and study charts covered one wall entirely. "You should eat something." David pushed a plate toward his father. "You're losing weight again." "Already ate at work." James lied with practiced ease. "No, you didn't." "I can tell when you haven't eaten all day." James smiled tiredly. "Can't fool a future doctor, can I?" "Not this one." David watched his father take a small bite of pasta. "I got my immunology exam results back." James paused, fork midair. "And? A, 94%. James's face transformed completely, exhaustion replaced by undisguised pride. "That's my boy. Top of your class?" "Second. Missed first by 2 points to Kim." "Next time." James squeezed his son's shoulder affectionately. "You'll get it next time." "Dad, I've been thinking. I could take a semester off. Work full-time at the hospital. They're always hiring support staff." James' expression hardened immediately. "Absolutely not. These double shifts are killing you. I see it every day." "This discussion is closed." James's tone was final, brooking no argument. "Your education comes first, always." Hayes studied the apartment more carefully. Despite modest furnishings, everything appeared meticulously maintained. Books organized by subject. Counter surfaces spotless. No luxury items, but dignity in every corner. He noticed photos on the wall. James, in a professional chef's uniform at what appeared to be a culinary competition, focused intently on plating a complex dish. An award certificate partially visible beside it, National Minority Chef Recognition, first place 7 years earlier. A woman's photo James's late wife presumably watched over the living space from a simple frame adorned with a small dried flower. Warm light bathed the modest apartment. The smell of simple but expertly prepared food reached Hayes even through the window. Father and son laughed quietly despite their serious conversation, a bond of deep respect evident in every interaction. Later, after David retreated to his bedroom to continue studying, James remained at the kitchen table alone. The apartment quieted except for the occasional turning of pages from behind David's closed door. James pulled out a leather-bound notebook from his work bag and opened it methodically. Hayes watched as he uncapped a pen and began writing with precise movements, documenting the day's events. His handwriting appeared impeccable, a chef's attention to detail evident in each careful stroke. As he wrote, a framed photo on the table caught his attention. He paused, touching it gently, his wife's smiling face looking back at him from happier times. "I'm trying, Marie." His whisper barely carried through the window. "Some days are harder than others." Hayes watched as memory overtook James, his eyes distant, a flashback evidently playing in his mind. A hospital room, his wife's thin hand in his, the machines beeping steadily. "Promise me," she had said, voice weakened by months of treatment. "David will become a doctor, no matter what." "I promise," he had answered without hesitation. "And promise you'll stand up for yourself when it matters. Don't let them take your dignity." "I promise that too." Now James faced the impossible balance: fight for recognition and risk losing everything, or continue enduring discrimination to secure his son's future. Justice versus stability, dignity versus security. Hayes noticed something he'd missed initially. On David's desk, visible through his partially open door, sat law books mingled with medical texts. Constitutional law, employment law, civil rights litigation, not standard medical school reading. James's pen scratched softly against paper as he completed his daily record. The apartment clock ticked steadily in the background. His wife's photo seemed to watch him with patient eyes, waiting for a decision he wasn't yet ready to make. Hayes returned to Meridian Hotel at 2 a.m., mind churning with everything he'd witnessed. The night manager jumped visibly when he appeared at the front desk. "Sir, we weren't expecting. I need the employee files. All performance reviews for kitchen staff, last 5 years. Now, sir? Now." In his temporary office, Hayes spread the documents across his desk. James Turner's file revealed a clear pattern once examined chronologically. Exemplary reviews until approximately 8 months ago. Recommendations for promotion from 3 different executive chefs, all denied for increasingly vague reasons. Hayes compared credentials meticulously. James's culinary degree from the Institute of Culinary Excellence outranked the current kitchen manager's technical certification from a community college program. His experience exceeded Pamela's own background in both years and variety. He pulled Pamela's hiring records and subsequent management decisions, creating a timeline. Disturbing patterns emerged under scrutiny. Minorities systematically disadvantaged through schedule manipulation, disciplinary actions, and promotional opportunities. Formal complaints mysteriously resolved without action. Documented misconduct dismissed or minimized. Hayes stood and walked to his window, staring out at the city lights spread below the luxury hotel. His own reflection stared back: gray hair, expensive suit, the trappings of success built over decades in the hospitality industry. He remembered his own beginnings. Dishwasher at 19, working through college. The manager who saw his potential and gave him his first real opportunity despite his lack of connections or pedigree. "I've lost touch," he murmured to himself, the realization settling heavily. Built a company that claims to value merit while allowing this to happen. He picked up his phone and dialed a number despite the hour. It was answered immediately. "This is Hayes. I need the corporate HR director in my office at Meridian by 8 a.m. tomorrow. And tell the legal team to be on standby for a video conference at 7 a.m. He hung up, decision crystallizing. The question remained. Would he act decisively on what he'd discovered, or would corporate politics and liability concerns protect Pamela Whitaker? Hayes paced his presidential suite at 7 a.m. sharp, freshly showered but unrested. 3 video screens displayed serious faces, Meridian's legal counsel connecting remotely from corporate headquarters. "These discrimination patterns are clear," he stated, flipping through evidence compiled overnight. "Systematic, documented, potentially actionable." "Concerning," agreed the lead attorney, choosing her words carefully. "But proving intent requires—" "I don't need to prove intent in court," Hayes interrupted. "I need to fix my company before this becomes a legal nightmare. We have an employee who's documented 3 years of discriminatory treatment. He could file a lawsuit tomorrow." "Has he threatened legal action?" asked another attorney. "No. That's the remarkable part. He's still trying to work within our system despite years of being stonewalled." "Then perhaps a transfer for this employee—" "That's not solving the problem," Hayes cut in sharply. "That's avoiding it. I want solutions, not evasions." The legal team exchanged glances, recognizing Hayes' resolve. They shifted from damage control to constructive action, outlining the necessary steps for proper investigation and remedy. Hayes dispatched orders rapidly. The regional HR director would arrive by 10 a.m. An unannounced operational audit would begin immediately. Employee interviews would be scheduled throughout the day. "And Ms. Whitaker? How do you want to handle her?" asked the HR representative. "For now, business as usual. I want to observe her unguarded." James arrived at Meridian at 1:45 p.m., immediately noting unusual activity. Corporate suits clustered in conference rooms normally reserved for wedding consultations. Management staff whispered in corners, tension evident in their postures. Pamela barked orders more sharply than usual, her typical composure fraying at the edges. "All department heads meeting. 4 o'clock, mandatory," she announced, passing James without making eye contact. "Bring your performance metrics." James nodded acknowledgement, catching fragments of conversation as he passed the employee break room. "Corporate audit. Hayes himself requesting documents. Personnel records pulled overnight." His phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from David. "Got my pharmacology results. Call me when you can." "Good news." James smiled briefly, heart lightening despite the workplace tension. He texted back a quick, "Proud of you," before tucking the phone away. He noticed Pamela watching him from across the kitchen, her eyes narrowing at his momentary smile. She turned sharply away when caught observing, her body language broadcasting suspicion and hostility. The air thickened with tension as the afternoon progressed. Whispers followed James through hallways and storage areas. Management suits invaded kitchen territory with clipboards and tablets. James focused on lunch service preparation, alert to the changing atmosphere but maintaining his professional demeanor. At 4 p.m. sharp, staff gathered in the grand ballroom per instruction. Tables had been removed, with chairs arranged in rows facing a podium. Frontline workers clustered together, separate from management staff who occupied the front rows. James chose a seat in the back row. Silent, observant, prepared for anything. Pamela stood near the podium, posture rigid with nervous energy. She checked her watch repeatedly, whispered intensely with the hotel manager, and scanned the room with growing impatience. At 4:05, the ballroom doors opened. CEO Hayes entered, flanked by the regional HR director and 2 assistants carrying tablets. The room fell immediately silent, all conversations ceasing mid-sentence. "Thank you all for coming," Hayes began. His voice carried natural authority without raising volume. "I'm Daniel Hayes, While some of you may recognize me from photos or previous visits, I realize we haven't properly met. Eyes darted around the room. Management staff straightened their postures, adjusting ties and smoothing blazers. Meridian Hotel Group was built on principles of excellence and respect, Hayes continued, scanning the assembled staff. Today, we're conducting a comprehensive review of our operations, focusing particularly on our employment practices. Pamela stepped forward, professional smile firmly in place. Mr. Hayes, I've prepared a presentation on our department's achievements and metrics for the last quarter. That won't be necessary, Ms. Whitaker. Hayes's tone left no room for discussion. We're approaching this differently today. The HR director moved forward, distributing tablets to staff members in each row. This is an anonymous survey about your work experience at Meridian. Your honest input is critical and protected by our non-retaliation policy, which is outlined on the first screen. Pamela moved through the rows, smiling tightly at staff as they received tablets. Remember, we're a family here, she murmured just loudly enough to be heard. Families handle issues internally. James accepted his tablet, noting the comprehensive nature of the questions. Workplace treatment, promotion opportunities, witnessed discrimination, specific incidents. He answered truthfully, aware of Pamela's gaze tracking respondents as they worked. The room filled with the soft tap of fingers on screens. Management staff shifted uncomfortably in the stiff hotel chairs. The subtle scent of executive cologne mingled with kitchen staff's work clothes, the class division evident even in the air they breathed. 30 minutes later, Hayes returned to the podium as staff completed the surveys. Behind him, a large screen descended from the ceiling. I want to share some preliminary findings, he announced. Not from today's survey, those results will require analysis, but from our corporate review. The screen illuminated with data charts, bar graphs, statistical analyses. Meridian's company-wide promotion rates show disturbing disparities when broken down by demographic categories. Hayes indicated the first chart. While our workforce is approximately 62% minority across all properties, only 17% of management positions are held by non-white employees. Murmurs rippled through the audience. At this location specifically, Hayes continued, advancing to the next slide, qualified minority candidates were passed over at 4 times the rate of their white counterparts during the past year, despite equal or superior qualifications and experience. Pamela stepped forward, professional mask slipping. Sir, if I may address these statistics. Not yet, Ms. Whitaker. Hayes's tone remained professional but firm. I have more to share before opening discussion. The presentation continued relentlessly. Pay disparities between demographically similar positions, schedule inequities showing less desirable shifts disproportionately assigned to minority staff. Disciplinary actions targeting minorities at 3 times the rate of white employees. Consider this specific case study, Hayes said, displaying an anonymized employee profile. 12 years of exemplary service. Professional culinary degree with honors. 6 formal commendations from guests. Perfect attendance record. Passed over for promotion 4 times in favor of less qualified candidates. James kept his expression neutral, though he recognized his own career history stripped of identifying details. Additionally, Hayes continued, we've received substantial employee documentation cataloging discriminatory practices. 3 years of meticulous records detailing specific incidents, including dates, times, and witnesses. Pamela's face tightened almost imperceptibly. Her eyes scanned the room until they found James in the back row, a flash of understanding and anger crossing her features. Last night, Hayes revealed, drawing all attention back to the podium, I personally visited employees' homes. Murmurs rippled through the audience, louder this time. I saw firsthand the impact of our management decisions. An employee working double shifts to support his son through medical school after being repeatedly denied promotions and fair compensation that he demonstrably earned. James calmly reached into his bag, retrieving his documentation notebook and placing it on his lap. Several staff members noticed the action, their eyes widening with comprehension. The room temperature seemed to rise with the building tension. Pamela inhaled sharply, fists clenching at her sides. A current of solidarity began flowing through the staff rows as understanding dawned, connections forming between isolated incidents they'd witnessed or experienced. Pamela abandoned subtlety, striding toward the podium. "Mr. Hayes, this is clearly a misunderstanding. Some employees may be playing victim rather than addressing their performance issues. I can provide extensive documentation." James stood quietly. The movement drew all eyes in the room. "I don't need to play victim when I have facts." His voice carried calm authority through the silent ballroom. 3 years. Every incident documented. Times, dates, witnesses. He opened his notebook, pages filled with meticulous handwriting. October 15th, 2:30 p.m. Informed I lack polish for promotion, despite having the highest performance scores in the department. November 3rd, 8:15 a.m. Schedule changed without notice after requesting religious accommodation for my son's church confirmation. December 12th. Falsely accused of stealing wine despite video evidence showing my location elsewhere during the alleged theft. James turned a page. January 7th. Written up for poor team communication one day after suggesting diversity training to HR. February 23rd. Customer commendation for my service removed from official record while similar commendations for white staff were publicized in the company newsletter. He closed the notebook deliberately. Each entry copied and sent to my son, who's pursuing a pre-law minor alongside his medical studies, focusing specifically on employment discrimination law. The room fell completely silent. Not even breathing seemed to disturb the air. Excellence doesn't need your permission to exist. James's words cut through the tension with quiet dignity. I never wanted special treatment. Only fair opportunity based on my work and qualifications. His simple statement broke the dam. Other staff members began speaking, at first hesitantly, then with growing confidence. She reduced my hours after I reported harassment from a guest. I was written up for being 5 minutes late once, while others were excused repeatedly. My customer compliments disappeared from the record after I was featured in a local newspaper. I was told my accent would confuse guests and removed from front-facing positions. Pamela's face reddened with each new accusation. This is absurd. You're all conspiring. Enough, Miss Whitaker. Hayes's voice silenced the room. The evidence speaks for itself. She attempted damage control, professional mask slipping completely. You're taking isolated incidents entirely out of context. I've significantly improved department efficiency and guest satisfaction metrics. By creating a hostile work environment, Hayes interrupted. By violating our core principles and possibly federal law. James remained standing, calm amid the storm he'd unleashed. His documentation, kept meticulously through years of mistreatment, laid bare the systematic discrimination that had flourished under plausible deniability and isolation of victims. This ends today, Hayes declared with quiet intensity. Not just for James, but for everyone. You'd take the word of kitchen staff over a director? Pamela challenged, desperation evident. I take facts over titles, Hayes responded evenly. And the facts are overwhelming. James addressed the room, voice steady. I could have quit. Found another job. Many did exactly that. But that changes nothing for those who come after us. Staff members nodded, some openly wiping tears. I stayed because I believe in accountability, James continued. Not revenge. Accountability. The light in the ballroom seemed brighter now. A weight visibly lifted from many shoulders as years of silent suffering found voice at last. Pamela glared at James, last vestiges of professionalism evaporating. How will you support your precious son when you're unemployed after this stunt? Who will hire you after I'm finished? The threat hung in the air like a thundercloud. Would Pamela find a way to retaliate against those who spoke out? Hayes stepped forward, positioning himself deliberately between Pamela and James. Ms. Whitaker is suspended, effective immediately pending full investigation. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Pamela's face drained of color. "You can't," she began. "I can and have. This decision is final." Hayes's tone remained measured but absolute. "Security will escort you to collect personal belongings. Your access codes are already deactivated." "On what grounds?" Pamela demanded, voice rising. "Credible allegations of discriminatory practices, violation of company policies, and potential creation of legal liability." Hayes maintained eye contact. "The investigation will determine next steps, but your continued presence would compromise its integrity." Two security officers appeared at the ballroom door, their presence making the situation's finality clear. "This isn't over," Pamela hissed, grabbing her tablet and purse. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she exited, back rigid with fury and humiliation. Hayes turned to face the assembled staff. "I apologize to each of you for allowing this situation to develop under my leadership. The failure of oversight was mine." The sincerity in his voice resonated through the room. No corporate doublespeak, no deflection of responsibility. "Effective immediately, all personnel decisions at this property will require regional approval. We're implementing a complete review of all promotions, disciplinary actions, and schedule assignments from the past year." He faced James directly. "Mr. Turner, pending review by an independent committee, I'm appointing you Interim Food and Beverage Director." Stunned silence gave way to spontaneous applause. Kitchen staff stood first, their hands coming together in unified support. Housekeeping followed, then front desk personnel. Even some management joined, recognizing the rightness of the moment. James stepped forward, extending his hand. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hayes." Their handshake was firm, equal, professional respect flowing both ways. "Any immediate changes you'd recommend, Mr. Turner?" Hayes asked. James considered briefly. "Staff should be allowed to take leftover event food that would otherwise be discarded. It reduces waste and supports our team members who often struggle with food costs." Hayes nodded. "Make it official policy immediately." As the meeting dispersed, staff surrounded James. Congratulations, relief, gratitude. For many, it was the first time they'd witnessed justice prevail in their professional lives. "I knew you kept records," whispered Carmen, a senior line cook, "but I never thought anyone would listen." "You stood for all of us," added Tomas from housekeeping. James accepted their words with humility, understanding the responsibility that came with this victory. Change would need to be sustained, not just celebrated. 1 month later, Meridian Hotel Group announced company-wide policy changes. Hayes personally presented them at a staff meeting, the ballroom now arranged in a circle to symbolize the new collaborative approach. "First, an anonymous reporting system for discrimination concerns," he explained, demonstrating the smartphone application. "Reports go directly to corporate HR and an independent review board, completely bypassing local management." Staff nodded approvingly, several already downloading the app. "Second, a blind review process for all promotions, qualifications evaluated without names, photos, or identifying information until final rounds." James, now permanently appointed as Food and Beverage Director after external review confirmed his qualifications, sat beside Hayes at the head table. His presence represented tangible proof that change was real, not just promised. Third, mandatory diversity training for all management, including myself. Not just compliance training, but meaningful education on recognizing and addressing unconscious bias. Hayes gestured toward James. "Mr. Turner's leadership has already improved operations significantly. Guest satisfaction scores up 22%. Staff turnover reduced by 34%. Menu innovation receiving industry recognition. The assembled staff applauded, pride evident in their expressions. For the first time, many felt their workplace reflected their value. Pamela Whitaker had been reassigned to a smaller Meridian property in a different state, with a significant demotion to assistant manager. Her formal warning remained in her permanent file. She'd accepted these terms rather than face termination after the investigation confirmed multiple policy violations. Legal counsel had advised her that fighting the decision would likely lead to worse consequences. James implemented his own changes beyond Hayes's company-wide reforms, mentorship programs for staff seeking advancement, transparent scheduling that accommodated education and family needs, regular skills development workshops open to all employees regardless of position. His culinary innovations, once ignored or credited to others, now appeared on menus across the Meridian chain. His nameplate adorned the office door that had previously remained closed to him. Meeting rooms that once excluded him now welcomed his ideas and perspective. The kitchen operated with new energy. Staff moved with purpose and pride rather than fear. Creativity flourished where intimidation had previously dominated. Even customers noticed the difference, commenting on the improved atmosphere and service. James unlocked his apartment door at 6 p.m. home at a reasonable hour for the first time in years. "Dad?" David called from the kitchen. "You're early." "Director's privilege," James answered, setting down grocery bags filled with fresh ingredients. "And single job status." They prepared dinner together, a ritual recently reclaimed from the demanding schedule that had kept them apart. As they sat down to eat, David slid an envelope across the table. "What's this?" James asked. "Open it." Inside, official university letterhead. Full scholarship for David's remaining medical education. "Academic Excellence Award," David explained, unable to contain his smile. "They only give 5 per year. Full tuition plus stipend." James stared at the letter, emotions overwhelming him. "You did it." "We did it," David corrected. "Your sacrifices made this possible. Now you can drop the hospital job completely." James nodded slowly. "Already gave notice. I'm also enrolling in the Executive Chef Certification program, getting back to my roots. Mom would be so proud." David's voice softened. "Of both of us." James glanced at his wife's photo on the wall. "We did it, love. He's going to be okay." After dinner, James found an envelope that had been slipped under their door. Inside, a handwritten letter from CEO Hayes. "Mr. Turner," it read, "I offer my personal apology for a system that failed you and so many others. Your integrity in the face of injustice has transformed our company. Your restraint when you had every right to seek revenge speaks volumes about your character. Thank you for making Meridian better. Sincerely, Daniel Hayes." James folded the letter carefully. The celebration drink David poured made a gentle pop as he opened it. Their embrace carried years of shared struggle finally coming to fruition. His wife's photo seemed to smile more brightly from the wall. How would this change ripple through the entire company beyond just one hotel? 6 months later, Business Leadership Quarterly featured Meridian Hotel Group on its cover. The headline, "Corporate Culture Transformation Drives Record Growth." Inside, a full-spread article detailed the company's dramatic shift following the discrimination case. Diversity in management positions had increased 40% company-wide. Employee satisfaction reached all-time highs. Revenue grew 28% year over year, a remarkable achievement in the competitive luxury hotel market. "We discovered our biggest untapped resource was the talent we already employed but failed to recognize," Hayes explained in the interview. "Addressing systemic barriers didn't just fulfill our moral obligation. It unleashed innovation and commitment that transformed our business results." The article prominently quoted James. "Systemic change requires more than good intentions. It demands honest evaluation, accountability, and concrete action. What feels uncomfortable in the moment often leads to the greatest growth. The piece detailed Meridian's new mentorship program for culinary students from disadvantaged backgrounds. James's initiative, now implemented company-wide with corporate funding. 20 scholarships annually. Guaranteed internships. Career pathways designed to bring diverse talent into leadership positions. Even Pamela Whitaker appeared in the article. After sensitivity training and mentorship, she acknowledged her biases in a company case study now used for management training. "I didn't recognize how my preconceptions affected my decisions," she admitted. "Facing the evidence was difficult but necessary for my professional growth. I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn rather than simply being terminated." Meridian's lobby now displayed fresh flowers arranged daily. Kitchen operations ran harmoniously under James's leadership. Management meetings included diverse voices contributing to the company's renewed success and innovation. Culinary Academy graduation day. James and Hayes attended together, watching the first cohort of mentorship students receive their certificates. Among them, 3 had already accepted positions at Meridian Properties. "From your perspective," the journalist covering the event asked James, "what's the key lesson in your journey?" James considered carefully before answering. Dignity preserved through adversity becomes the foundation for meaningful change. 12 words that encapsulated years of struggle and transformation. "The easy path would have been giving up or giving in," James continued. "But lasting change requires documentation, persistence, and strategic action. One voice becomes many when truth speaks to power." Hayes nodded in agreement. One person standing firm altered the course of an entire company. Imagine what we could accomplish if more organizations listened to voices they've previously ignored. As the ceremony concluded, James supervised staff boxing leftover food, a practice now standard at all Meridian events. Every container labeled for employees to take home, a small but meaningful symbol of the larger transformation. Have you witnessed workplace discrimination? Share your story below, the narrator encouraged viewers. Subscribe for more stories of justice and transformation that remind us change is possible. What policies would you implement to ensure workplace equality? Comment your ideas, the prompt continued. Your experiences matter in creating better workplaces for everyone. The final image showed James watching proudly as his son David, now in his final year of medical school, volunteered at a community health clinic. A circle completed, a promise fulfilled, a legacy established. Proud smiles filled the graduation hall. Applause echoed for the achievements recognized. For James Turner, this taste of success proved sweeter than any dessert he had ever created. Have you witnessed workplace discrimination? Share your story below, the narrator encouraged viewers. These real-life stories remind us that dignity and persistence can transform unjust systems. If this touching story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to Beat Stories for more powerful Black stories that illuminate the quiet strength found in everyday struggles. Your support helps us continue bringing these life stories to light.